Hey, welcome back. This is our third explainer in this series, and it's our second one digging deep into the really important topic of neurodivergent anxiety. All right, let's just jump right in. I wanted to kick things off with this quote from Rollo May because, wow, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? We're not just talking about being a little worried here. For so many people in the neurodivergent community, anxiety is this profound, constant, and genuinely painful thing to live with. And it's so important to just validate that feeling right from the get-go. Okay, so to really get a handle on how anxiety shows up, we've got to take a quick step back and remember why it's so common in the first place. This will be a quick recap of what we covered last time. So if you remember, we talked about how these three drivers basically create a perfect storm for anxiety. You've got those interoception challenges, right, which can make it super hard to even realize what emotion you're feeling as it's building up. Then there's that deep need for predictability, which can make our often chaotic world feel like a constant threat. And finally, that detail-oriented cognitive style, it can make you get kind of lost in all the little details, making it tough to see the bigger picture. You put all that together, and bam, you've got the foundation for some serious chronic anxiety. But look, understanding why it happens is only half the battle, right? So today, we're going to shift gears. We're moving from the why to the, okay, so what now? How do these feelings actually show up? And maybe most importantly, how do you tell the difference between a helpful coping strategy and a real sign of crisis? And this chart right here, this is going to be our roadmap for the rest of our time together. It is an absolutely brilliant tool because it visually separates those adaptive coping skills from the signs of overwhelming distress. We're going to break this down piece by piece. So you see that line going from left to right? Think of that as an anxiety meter. It's escalating. We're going to start with the top half, the common and really effective coping tools. And then we'll dive into the bottom half to understand what happens when things get overwhelming. All right, first up, let's talk about the top of this chart. And this is so important. We need to see these behaviors not as problems, but as powerful, effective, and totally valid ways of self-regulating. These are the go-to tools in the toolbox. So let's talk about stimming. The most crucial thing to get about stimming is that it is functional. Whether it's tapping your fingers, seeking deep pressure, or even skin picking, this is often the very first clue that anxiety is rising. It's literally the nervous system trying to get itself back in balance. It's a feature, not a bug. Now, this is really interesting. The idea of complex stimming. This is where preservation comes in, engaging really deeply with a special interest. This is another incredibly powerful calming strategy. Think about it. Listening to the same song over and over or rewatching a comfort movie, it gives you that familiarity and predictability. It's like finding a safe harbor in the middle of an emotional storm. And this brings us to routines and rituals. This is such a great example of directly fighting back against one of those core anxiety drivers we talked about, that need for certainty. This isn't about being stubborn or inflexible. It's about building a stable foundation for yourself, creating little islands of predictability in a world that can feel completely chaotic. It's an absolutely essential tool. Okay, so these are all fantastic adaptive tools. But what happens when they're just not enough? What happens when that stress bucket just gets too full and starts to overflow? What happens when the world just becomes so overwhelming that these coping skills can't keep up anymore? And that brings us to the bottom half of our roadmap. This is where we see what happens when that coping process starts to turn into a crisis. These are the distress signals we really need to pay attention to. Okay, before we go any further, I need you to hear this because it is the single most important point we're going to make today. These behaviors, they are not failures. They are not bad behavior. They are not manipulative. They're involuntary signals that a person's entire system is completely overloaded and has been pushed way past its limit to cope. Approaching this with compassion isn't just nice, it's absolutely essential. So, when a person feels totally and completely powerless, their brain will desperately try to grab some of that control back. And this might look like micromanaging someone or having a really intense reaction to a tiny little change in the plan. The chart calls this a face-saving request, which I think is a great way to put it. It's not really an order. It's more like a desperate plea to restore a sense of control when everything feels like it's spinning out. Now, as that stress keeps building, what's the next logical step? Well, it's to escape. And this is a pure act of self-preservation. It might be physical, putting in earplugs or finding a quiet room. It could also be psychological, like masking even harder to just get through a situation. Or social, just needing to be completely alone. This isn't someone being rude, it's a necessary retreat to prevent a total system shutdown. And if that escape just isn't possible, we hit the final stage, meltdown. And listen, this is such a critical distinction to make. A meltdown is an involuntary neurological event. The part of the brain that handles rational thought has gone completely offline. The person has lost control. I'm going to say it again, it is not a choice. So, what do you do? How should you respond? This is so important. First things first, you can't stop it. Don't even try to reason with the person. Your number one priority is safety, for them and for anyone else around. Get them to a safe place, give them space. You have to understand that recovery is going to take time and you can't rush it. And please remember, it is not voluntary, and it's almost always followed by this huge wave of shame and regret. Your calm, non-judgmental support in that moment is everything. Okay, let's take a breath and put this all together. What's the big takeaway from this entire roadmap? Really, it all boils down to this simple but incredibly profound difference. On one side, you have your adaptive responses, things like stimming or diving into a special interest. These are effective, healthy tools for managing things. But on the other side, you have the distress signals, like claiming control or having a meltdown. These are the involuntary signs that the system is just completely overwhelmed. And why is this so critical to understand? Well, because when you can tell where you or someone you care about is on this roadmap, you can do something about it. It gives neurodivergent folks the language and the framework to ask for what they need before it hits a crisis point. And for allies, parents, friends, it helps you offer the right kind of support at the right time. So, I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. Now that you have this framework, this roadmap, how might it change the way you see your own responses to anxiety? Or maybe how will it change the way you show up and support a neurodivergent person in your life? It's a really powerful shift in perspective, isn't it? If this has really resonated with you and you feel like you're ready to go even deeper, well, this learning journey doesn't have to stop here. To learn more about yourself or about a neurodivergent person in your life, you can sign up for the full course or check out more resources. All the info is right there on your screen. Thanks so much for taking the time to understand with us today.